Today I'm playing Nekketsu Oyako, and if I pronounce that anywhere near correctly, it roughly translates to hot-blooded family. It's a Japanese-only PS1 launch title developed by Technosoft and produced by Sega. If you're looking at this footage and thinking that it looks like Streets of Rage or Final Fight or Double Dragon, then yeah. It was a late entry to the side-scrolling beat-em-up genre, a genre that had already hit its peak and was starting to trail out. This game came at a time when it was trying to cash in on the tropes of the genre that hadn't seen much innovation since Kung Fu Master first hit the arcades in 1984. The game begins in the very cyberpunk Neo-Tokyo 2064. It might not look like the dystopian cyberpunk future, but people are throwing their PS1s into trash cans, so you know that times are tough here, and people have given up hope and happiness. From the outset, you can tell that this game is wearing its inspirations on its sleeve. This is Streets of Rage, it is Final Fight, and it is Double Dragon. If I told you that the story of the game is that you play as hardened vigilantes in a dystopian metropolis who take the fight to the cold hard city streets to defeat the evil crime organization, which game am I even talking about? It's all of them. It's Streets of Rage, it's Double Dragon, it's Final Fight, it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it's Golden Axe. Okay, maybe it's not Golden Axe, but it's all of the others. It's every late 80s, early 90s side-scrolling beat-em-up game. The premise of them all is just kind of the same thing, and that's what Nekketsu is too. It even has our three favourite characters from the genre. Guy with sleeves rolled up to his shoulders, older muscle dude, and female. And if you've played literally any of these games, then you won't be surprised to find that this game plays exactly like those games. Only somehow, it's slightly worse. Streets of Rage and Final Fight and probably nearly all of the other games in the genre look really great. Nekketsu looks like a close approximation, but it's a copy. And at a distance, it tricks you. It looks okay, until you see it moving. And then there's a lack of cohesiveness to the sprites on the screen and the game world itself and the mechanics. It leaves you with this sense that everything is disconnected. The sprites just kind of float across the screen independently of the world, and everything feels thin and without weight and consequence. It's a knockoff. So what more can I say? I finished the first level, and the game is generic. I'll play through it to the end, because if I don't see the credits I won't consider it complete, but how can I say anything more interesting about this game? I've seen it before. You've seen it before, and we've all seen it before, that's it. Then you're swallowed by a whale. And now you're crawling through the belly of said whale, fighting octopuses with boxing gloves and catgirls called Sharon. What just happened? I blinked once and now the game is off the rails. This guy called Van Damme turns up, and just like the real Van Damme, he dies when you throw a hand grenade in his face. This masked man is called Freddy. I think they got their horror icons mixed up, I don't know. I think the devs just started throwing things into the pot to see what happens. They're not making soup anymore, they're concocting a potion. Just throwing in ideas one after the other. And no one's there to say no, don't do that, it's too much. And you know what? Good. I was ready to throw this game in the trash, but at least now it's piqued my interest. At least the game did something interesting. I'm not ready to say that it's a good game, but at least it's not 100% forgettable. I can see some heart that the developers put into it. I was ready to call it a Streets of Rage knockoff and just shrug my shoulders and say, okay, whatever. But the developers did it first. They shrugged their shoulders and they said whatever first. And now that I'm looking at the game, I can see some other places where it seems like some genuine care on the part of the developers went into it. One thing that Nekketsu does is that it gives each character fighting game style combo inputs. A lot of its contemporaries didn't do that. It gives each character in the game a much wider selection of things to do. Some effort went into differentiating the characters in as much as each character has different world items that they can interact with. There are heavier weapons that can only be used by rando, and alcohol that is locked off if you try to pick it up with one of the kids. Again, none of this pushes the game anywhere near the territory of being good, but since I'm going to see it through to the end anyway, at least I can find these small moments of the developers doing interesting things with the soulless cash grab product that their executives probably forced them to make. The problem here though is that that's really it. Those are the positives. The rest is all mostly negative. The game is relatively tedious. You see the same enemies again and again in palette swaps. After that first shock moment of finding yourself in the belly of the whale facing a new and surreal world, the game never does anything like that again. It's just random things that walk out of the side of the screen, and you punch them and then you move on. Nothing ever feels different. And the actual challenge of the game never changes either, it just becomes longer to get through. The only way that enemies get harder is by having them deal more damage to you, and in turn giving them more and more health. You can still stun lock them in place forever, it's just instead of hitting them 4 or 5 times, you have to hit them 20 times to defeat them. There's no extra strategy required, it's just you need to press more buttons. You'll often find that the guy you need to hit 20 more times to be able to continue is off screen, and you can't even reach him. And when they do walk back onto the screen, you hit them once, it sends them flying back off the screen, and you have to wait for them to pull themselves back up to their feet and slowly saunter back into view. Do that 20 times, it becomes a frustrating experience. It's made even more frustrating by how persistently the game will flash this alert at you with this obnoxious sound telling you to go, keep going, move forwards. Only you're still locked in the middle of a fight. You're waiting for the guy to walk back onto the screen. You can't go. The game doesn't care. It just sirens this alert at you over and over again, and you have to listen to it. Truthfully, the game just kinda sucks. I appreciate what it tried to do, but it's just not really very good. And there's not really a lens through which I can look at it and find it to be any kind of enjoyable experience. This is the 8th game I've played in this series of playing through every PS1 game, and I'm ranking it 8th out of all 8 of those games. Last place. If you gave me this list to choose from, I would choose to play any of those other games before I ever chose to play this game again. It has some positives, it has some humour, it has some cool things where you can see its heart, but it's just not enough. Especially in a saturated genre where the same game already exists 10 times over. And they're all better. If you watched this video through to the end, then thank you. If you haven't done so, please consider subscribing and check out some of the other videos in this series. And if you do, I'll see you there.